Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes! Finally! Oh, thank goodness. I was going to be like, if he can't hear me, I'm going to be so upset.
No, I figured it out, so
Okay,
it's
cool.
all good. But yeah, I'm ready to just jump right in if you are.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So I guess we should tell the story. I mean, this is, I think, the fourth time we tried to do this. So we were going to do it last Friday evening after practice, but it was raining. And I said, I don't, like, my clothes are wet and I'm hungry. I want to go get changed and get cleaned up and get food and everything. So it didn't make much sense to stay super late and do it then. And then something came up Monday. I can't remember. I think I had my early graduation ceremony or reception thing in Frost. So that was a timing conflict. And then Wednesday we tried doing this over Zoom, and I tried every possible thing to fix this problem except what was actually causing it.
Can you hear me?
It says you're connected to the audio, but I can't hear a word you're saying. So I don't know what's going on. So you could hear me perfectly fine, and it said you were connected to the audio, but I couldn't hear a word you were saying.
I went on 3 devices. Can you hear me on my phone? That doesn't make any sense. 3 devices. I went on my computer, like my personal, my work, and then I went on my phone and I tried like everything. And then like 2 seconds.
And everything on your end was fine. But eventually we just decided, call it a night. We'll try Friday night. So then I got my roommate. I asked him to come join me on the call and had the exact same problem.
What's up, Ben?
Hey, Shay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I can't hear you. This is the same problem that we were having.
You can't hear me?
I can't hear a word you're saying. Nope.
That's crazy.
So that told me that it was probably a problem on my end rather than your end. And it took me 2 minutes of Googling, and I realized that I had, because I've got my external mic here to try to up the sound quality, which I usually don't bother with during class because, you know, it's a little bit more of a hassle. But for a podcast or show like this, I want to try to improve things when I can. But my default setting was same as speaker for the audio input and output. So what was happening was you were connected to audio perfectly fine. It's just Zoom on my end was trying to feed the audio out through my microphone. And obviously that doesn't work because it's a microphone, not a speaker.
And I thought the funny part was when you like texted me after, you were like, oh, I can hear our sound on the recorded video.
Yes.
And then we're like, maybe we can interview that way. And I'm like, then it'll just be awkward because then it's like, what if I didn't answer the question fully, or we can't like riff off of each other during the conversation. So, but that was just hilarious. But Zoom is just,
well, it's completely my fault. I feel like a total idiot.
No, but it's not though. Like, I didn't even know. And I was like, is it me? Like, I don't know. Because sometimes Zoom does those fluke things. And you're like, what is happening? But now we know if you connect an external device to check.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go. Awesome.
So I had, oh my word, I feel so stupid. So
you're good.
Yes. But that's a good note, because even for me as a teacher, like if I have like another little webcam, and at first I was like, well, how do I get it so I can show myself and what I'm showing, like what I'm teaching, and then I figured it out. So it's okay. We live and learn.
Yes. Yeah, so now that we've got that out of the way, I guess we can just jump right in. So Corrine, you are currently the assistant track and field and cross country coach, and specifically the sprints coach during track season. But you were also a student here at Gordon, and you ran track and field for Gordon as well. So as I do with almost all my guests, just to start out, tell me what brought you to Gordon.
So it was my senior year. I was looking, so all my life I wanted to be a teacher since I was 6. So I needed a program, a school that would be able to tap into that passion. And then I wanted a school with track. And it was very hard to find for me. I looked at Framingham State, I looked at Westfield State, Where else did I looked a lot of places, and then finally like Gordon popped up in my email, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna check it out. And then I started investigating it, and I'm like, wow, it has a top-notch education program. It has a track and field program. It has faith. Like, what more could you want? And then I went to go visit, and I was like, well, that's sealed. Like, I know this is the place for me. And I loved it. I felt so prepared after I graduated from the education program. I'm currently doing the master's program now. As far as track goes, so that Gordon has like a very interesting track history. So I did track for all 4 years, but I went through 3 coaches. So that was like an average of like 1 per year. And it kind of, I think my junior year was when it kind of stunk because I really like plateaued with my running. I wasn't improving. I didn't know why. But then when Coach Weikert came in, I was like, finally, like a coach that I should have had like all 4 years. But that's like another story we can get to later. But as the assistant cross country and track coach, so coach asked me my senior year, during practice, we were on Temmie Road, and he's like, hey, do you want to come back? And I was like, yes. It was during like a short sprints workout, and you know, sprinters, we get a lot of rest, but that's just how sprinting works. And then he asked me, and I said yes. So mainly in the fall, I work with recruits and calling them. I just got off the Zoom call with a recruit, and it's pretty fun, but sometimes it gets a little lonely just being on a computer. So I love, by the time it's springtime, I get to work with what I love most, which is the sprints. So
Yeah. So tell me how your track career got started.
oh my. So I danced for 10 years, which I think people find kind of funny. I don't know if you could picture it, but I did ballet, tap, jazz, hip hop, and point. Hip hop was my personal favorite. And then around high school, 9th grade, they put us, I did dance for fun. I didn't do competitive dance. And they put us in class like with the competition girls, and it just got cliquey. And I'm like, I'm not about this. Like, I'm a very relaxed person. Cliques do not work for me. So then everyone's like, you should do track because you're super fast. You should do track. And I'm like, okay. So my sophomore year I did. And I went to Danvers High School, which is about like 15 minutes away from Gordon. And I started winter track, and I mainly ran the 300, I ran the 600, I ran the 55, I ran the 4x4. And I remember the spring track coach was talking to one of the other athletes on the team. And he's like, oh, you should have her do spring track. And so then I did. And that's where I met the 400. And I remember he put me in it for the very first time. And I was like, what is this race? He didn't tell me how to run it. It was kind of like a test. And so I ran it, and I was like, oh, that was the worst, but I want to do it again. But I ran anything from the 100, 200, 400. But I mainly love the 2 and the 4. And my first year track, I qualified for states in the 400. So that was pretty exciting. So that's like how my track career got started. So at Danvers High School, it was a pretty fun time. We ran on a pavement track, and it would get soft when it got hot out. It was disgusting. And everyone got shin splints. It was the worst, the absolute worst.
Yeah, I didn't realize you and Edison both have a bit of a dance background.
Oh, he has a dance back? Well, actually, I'm not surprised. Yeah. He does. Sorry, Edison. I know
he was actually my TA when we did ballroom dancing. Yeah.
Yes, he was a TA. Yeah. I don't know.
We had him on a couple weeks ago, but
that's hilarious. Yeah. We both have danced. That's hilarious. Oh my word.
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite memories from running in high school? Any meets that stand out to you or anything like that?
Oh, yes. There was this beautiful meet. So our rival in high school was Swampscott High School. And so we were the Danvers Falcons, and they were called the Big Blue. I don't really know what a Big Blue is, so don't even ask me. But maybe the ocean, they were just called the Big Blue. And every year, like, we would always go back and forth on, like, who would win. It would be them or us because we were just so close. But I remember this meet. Oh, there's a few meets. I'm going to start with my sophomore year one. So this was when I was running in the 400, and I got to the end of my race. The last 100 and the 400 is always the hardest part. And so at that point, I was like, I have a choice to make. I can either stop and stop trying right now, or I can finish, and I can finish, like, strong. And so I just decided to, like, book it. I was like, I am done. I just want to end. And then finally I got to the finish line, and then I just fell. And then my coach, like, picked me up, and I had, like, scrapes all over me. And he's like, that was epic. And he's like, by the way, you were, like, 1/10 of a second from qualifying from states. And I'm like, what does that even mean? But I was, like, pretty pumped up after that. And then my senior year at that same meet, so we were just going back and forth. Like, my coach put me in the one, he, like, stacked everything. He put me in, like, 5 events so and he put, like, all his faster people in, like, multiple events. And we just kept going back and forth. And then finally it came down to the 4x4, and we were, like, tied at that point. And so he put me as lead leg because I was going to make a huge gap. And so at the beginning I made a humongous gap, and then it got smaller and smaller and smaller. And I was like, oh my word. I'm like, if we lose this because of, like, the relay, I'm going to be so upset. And then finally the last girl who ran the last 100, she's like, I'm just gonna go. And then she, like, caught up to the girl and, like, booked it, and then we won the relay. And my coach and I were like, yes, and we hugged and we won. So I feel like always at Swampscott, something epic always happened. So those were always my favorite meets in high school.
So I want to ask you about your Gordon career. And I'm sure you have plenty of highlights because I did a little bit of research before the show tonight. And by my count, you have, or at least are a part of 10 school records.
I guess so.
Between indoor and outdoor tracks. So indoor, it's the 200, the 400, the 5, the 6, and the 4x4. And in outdoor, it's the 1, the 2, the 4, the 400 hurdles, and the 4x4.
Mm-hmm.
So what stands out to you from, like, all those meets that you set those records at, or throughout your career? Just give me some of the highlights.
Well, so it's interesting because when I came to Gordon, I would look at the record board because I wanted to see, like, where everyone was at. And sometimes I would look at the record board and I'd be like, I want to break some of those. So I kind of came in being like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this. But I never expected to break that many. My focus was on the 400. And I remember looking at the girls' record, and she ran like a 60. And at that point, I was running like 61. And I was like, well, I think I can break 60. And I did my senior year of high school. But I remember, like, for the 100, it was, like, during our conference meet, and I broke it by accident. I was like, my coach is like, yeah, you broke it. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know what it was because all I was focused on was the 400 and the 200. But I think I remember, like, that 4x4 record, that team was, like, the most amazing team. I felt like that was my freshman year. We all just clicked. All our times were about, like, between 60 and 64. And I remember that meet just being, like, so hot and warm. And we just, like, put out our all on that meet. It was, like, the most enjoyable thing. And I think, like, I'm, like, proud of that record the most just because it was, like, a team effort. And I love the 4x4 was, like, always my favorite event. It wasn't always the individual ones. It was always, like, the relays were the best. But I think aside from those records, I think one thing I learned, I think one of my most memorable years was probably my junior year. And because I basically like plateaued my junior year, I was not improving. My times were going down. It's really hard to come back. Like I ran a 57 my sophomore year, and then my junior year, I was running like 60s, which those are still fast. But for me, I was like, what is happening? And I think at that point, I was like at a low, and I was like, I don't even know what I wanted. Like, why am I still running? I'm like, am I done? Is this like, I've peaked? Have I peaked at this point? And I think that was when Coach Weikert came in, like when I was ready to give up. Like, I'm getting chills right now, but like when I was ready to give up, Coach Weikert came in, and I just kind of told him, like when I first met him, I was like, I plateaued. I don't know what happened, but I want to get back to like the point where I was at. And he's kind of the reason like I fell back in love with running, because he was so passionate about it.
Come on, finish the race, Corrine! Let's go! Turn it over!
And then my senior year, I just spiked back up, and I ran 57 for my 400 and then broke my 200 record. But I think what I want people to get out of this is like, winning races and breaking races like don't make you. It's like the hard times that really make you the best runner you can be. And that's like where you start to self-reflect and be like, how can I do better? Because if you're just winning all the time, that's not fun. So I think that's the overall lesson I want to say to people is the hard times get you to your better times. And they help so much. So if it wasn't for that hard time junior year, I don't think I would have fallen back in love with running.
How did the program change when Coach Weikert came in?
Well, it was a lot more fired up, as he likes to say. I think, so I remember my freshman year, I can tell you a little background about the other coaches. So my freshman year, his name was Coach Rich. He was awesome, but I think he was more on the distance end of things, and so we really needed a sprint coach. And then we had a sprint coach come in, and he was really passionate, and he was cool, but he wanted a smaller team, and I think most of the team didn't want that. And then the whole team dynamic just started becoming very unhealthy. So when Coach Weikert came in, we were kind of like, oh, well, another coach, like how long is this person going to stay? And I know some of the athletes were able to interview with him, some of the seniors and other athletes, because they wanted to make sure we had some longevity with the next coach that comes in. And I think the way it changed was people were held more accountable with their running. It reinstilled a bigger passion with everyone. And I felt like everyone felt more accepted. And Coach Weikert like makes people want to try. Even if like you're not a runner, he's like, oh, you can run. Like he believes you can be a runner even if you've never been a runner. And so I think that belief helped a lot of people like want to do track, and people like gravitate towards us now because they're like, what is this team doing that like we're not? So I think that is in itself how the program changed majorly. And now he's still here, so it's pretty great.
Yeah, well, and you had a really strong senior year, right? Because I think you went to New England's in a couple of events.
Yep.
So tell me about that experience.
So I went to New England's every year, but my senior year is where I made it the furthest. So I went to the last chance to qualify meet, and it was at MIT. And those meets were always, MIT is the most beautiful track. It's where like I PR'd the most. I did want to make it to nationals, but sadly did not. It's a little more difficult with sprinting than it is with cross country. You have to be within like the top 20, but I was in the top 50, top 30, top 50. So I was really close. But I'm trying to remember those meets. Oh, so New England's, I remember it was at, what college? It was at Middlebury, I think. and which is like right next to the Vermont border. So the track was in like this mountain valley, and it was just the most beautiful sight you could ever see. And I remember like coach coming up to me that day, and I qualified for the 4 and the 2, and he came up to me and he's like, well, this is your last race. And all day I was like trying not to lose it. And he like that statement just like made me lose it. And I was just like, I have to walk away. Like I can't. And then he came up to me. He's like, it's okay. Like, you know, like maybe this isn't your last race. And I'm like, I don't want it to be my last race. So I ran the 400. And I ran it okay. I think I ran it like 57.79. And you needed like under a 59 to qualify for the last chance to qualify meet. And then I ran my 200 and I won my heat, I'm pretty sure. And I ran like a 25.52. So that also qualified me for the last chance to qualify meet. But I just remember, like, I have such a vivid memory of him just coming up to me being like, this is your last race. And I'm like, why did you say that? It was the worst, but it's okay. I'm still here.
So you're coaching on both sides of the season right now, helping us out with cross country and with track. Did you ever run cross country as an athlete?
Nope, but coach tried to convince me all the time, and other coaches always did, because I ran the 600, which is the most awkward race to man, I would think, aside from the 500, which is even more awkward. But I think coaches always had this dream of putting me in the 800, and even Coach Weikert had it too. But I just like distance, I run 5Ks, and I think my best 5K without that much training, with like sprint training, was like a 23, which isn't like bad. But for me, what would happen was like 2 miles in, my shins would feel awful. Like I felt like pain splintering up my leg. It was brutal. And I always admire you guys when you run, and I'm like, I wish I could have done distance. And I kind of wish I tried it, but you know, God leads you down different paths, and that's okay. Like I help coach you guys. But I never did cross country. I was convinced to, but I never did it.
I know you mentioned this briefly at the start, with Coach Weikert asking you to come back and coach, but you know, I know you mentioned education, and obviously you're pursuing a career as a teacher as well. Is there? I mean, there's a lot of overlap, I feel like, between teaching. You know, coaching is a type of teaching in many respects. So, did that play a part in you wanting to come back?
Well, so I think I remember so I've always wanted to be a teacher. And then I didn't really want to be a coach until I did track. So it was like my high school outdoor coach, Coach Dunleavy, that like inspired me to be a track coach. And so it was a pretty easy decision when Coach Weikert asked me, and it's pretty cool working at the college level. There is a lot of overlap, except I'm dealing with older kids when I coach and then younger kids when I teach. And you know, I think what's similar is, you know, the instruction per se has to be explicit. And, you know, every athlete is different. So you have to differentiate or accommodate to any athlete. You know, you're not going to give a 5K runner a sprinter workout, and you're not going to give a sprinter workout a 5K workout. But even within the groups like sprinting and distance and throwing and jumps, you know, you have to accommodate and differentiate for your runners, because not every runner is going to be able to handle the same thing. That, you know, you might have a top runner and maybe not a top runner. You know, everyone can handle different things, and everyone has different capacities for running. So I think that's like the big thing, is being able to the light shut off.
Yeah, that's motion sensor.
You just got to move.
Yeah. Yep.
I think just being able to accommodate and differentiate for your runners and students is like a big similarity I see. But it was a no-brainer to say yes and come back and coach. So
what's it like working with Coach Weikert as opposed to being coached by him? Because I think Edison mentioned he didn't throw senior year. So I think you're the only person that's both been coached by him at Gordon and coached alongside him at Gordon. So what's that experience been like?
I guess the same and different in a lot of ways. Like now that we're coworkers, I think we always like joked with each other, but we've known each other even longer now than when I met him. So I think it's still fun. You know, he's still like is there to talk to or like give advice if you need to. He always picked on me even in college. Like my senior year, he would always give me a hard time. And I'm like, why are you giving me a hard time? And he even does it now. So I'm trying to think of like differences. I mean, I'm not running for him anymore, but I'm recruiting. So he's kind of like helped me recruit. I guess our conversations have changed where like he's coaching me to recruit or coaching me like, maybe we should put this on the Instagram or whatever, something like that. But I can't call him Justin. He's always coach. I just can't call him Justin. It doesn't work. But I wish I had him coach me for way longer though. And there's just something about being a college athlete than it is being an adult. It's stay a college athlete for as long as you can. If you can do another semester, Schneids, I would. So, yeah.
I wish I could. That's just.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Just not in my plans.
Yep.
Yeah. I was talking to Toro over the quarantine, and he was saying the same thing. Like, you know, I know we've basically all been redshirted with the COVID season. And he was saying, you know, I'd love to come back and do it, but that's just not in my plans. It's not going to work out.
Right.
But yeah, so you've been a coach here for 3.5 years now. So what are some of your favorite moments from that time that you've been here so far?
So many. I think my favorite was my first year coaching in 2017. So what's really sad to me now is like the first group I coached, I think you were the first group. Did you come in 2017?
Yes.
So you guys are graduating and I'm just like, what the heck? This is not right.
Yeah.
But I think that it was New England's for cross country. Mind you, I never experienced like a cross country race before. So I was so awed by all the people on the line. Everyone was like bundled up, and then like there was just so many people and there was so much excitement in the air that I've never experienced this before. I feel like track and cross country, they're totally two different beasts. And so I remember it was so cold. It was, I don't know, it was like 20 degrees with like a wind chill of 15. It was freezing. And I remember just like having on so many layers. I put on like, it felt like 10 pants that morning. I was like, I don't want to freeze. But, and I just remember like the girls race going off, and the girls team was so like, that was a really strong team. And it was cool to be able to coach them because I graduated and I already knew most of them. So that was really cool. But I just remember that race, and it was like the grittiest race. And it was amazing watching all of these runners compete, and the girls did the best they ever did in years. So that was the most memorable race. And I think I love cross country just because it's like it's just like one giant family. Not saying track isn't, but it's like a different community of runners. And I think my favorite part for New England's is we go up to like a little lake house. And we get to stay overnight, and it's just so much fun. So I think that's one of my favorite memories from cross country. I think with track, I think my favorite memories were just seeing the people I ran with like be so successful and become the runners that they always wanted to be or that they aimed to be. It was just, I think watching other people's success makes me happy. That's what makes me happy. So
going back to this past track season, which got shut down because of the pandemic, I've been asking people how they kind of handled the season being suspended and having to shut down. So I'm curious to hear from a coach's perspective, how you handled that.
Well, I felt very robbed because spring is like the season I get to come out and like really interact with you guys. And sprinting is like my thing. So not being able to do that, I was like, well, what am I supposed to do with this time? I appreciated the core and everything, which was great, but it wasn't the same. I think what stunk was like all of you guys were upset, so that made me upset. And like I just miss being able to build that community and relationship with all of you, even more so, and with new people. And at this time, I was also teaching, and I felt like as like a chicken with my head cut off as far as teaching went. I was like, how is this going to work? It worked itself out, but it was just, I felt robbed. I felt like, what do I do? I know, so I worked on some recruiting, and it was interesting talking to recruits because I'm like, yeah, we're all in a pandemic right now. That was like the start of our conversation. And then during quarantine, I also read 5 books. So that was fun, but I missed spending time with you guys. I felt so robbed.
Yeah, well, I'm curious to hear your perspective on that as well as a teacher. How has your school adapted to online learning or a hybrid of remote learning and trying to restart in-person classes? How they handled that?
So last year I was at a private school and I taught 5th grade, but I just remember it was Friday the 13th. It sounds like an epic story, but I just remember it going in like slow motion. And I remember in February, before all of this, we had an after school meeting and they asked us like, how would you handle if we had to go remote? And I'm like, this isn't going to happen. Like it's all the way in China. It's not like, I get why we're talking about this, but you know, we're going to be fine. And then that week of like Friday the 13th, our administrators were saying you have to have your contingency plans in by Wednesday. And I was like, what? I was like, is this actually happening? And then Friday the 13th came, and it just felt like everything went in slow motion. Like the kids and I were all packing up their desks, and they're like, Miss Previte, like, why do we have to bring all this work home? I'm like, because guys, we might have to go away for 2 weeks, and then I don't know, like, if we're going to be back. Like, I have no idea. Some of my 5th grade friends were mad about the homework, but one of my 5th grade friends was like, she doesn't know when she's going to see us again. And I thought after 2 weeks I was going to be able to see them. And then when it got extended, I just cried because just teaching in person is so much better. But I understand safety first. I care about my students' wellness. Like that comes first. But then I remember at the end of like the school day on March 13th, that's when they're like, we're not coming back for 2 weeks. But that day will forever be ingrained in my memory. Now I'm at a new school. So this year I'm teaching English as a second language in Lynn, Massachusetts. It's going to help me finish my master's. But we've been remote since the beginning of the year and are staying remote until at least February 5th. And then they're going to reevaluate. So learning a second language online for them is hard. Learning a language in general is hard. But they've been really good sports about it, and I feel like I have good relationships with them, and I feel like at the end of this, if all they get out of me is like a good relationship, like I did my job. That is kind of where I am at, but I also want them to have an effective and like a good education as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that week very well. Yeah, because we had stayed. That was our spring break week here at Gordon.
Right.
And I remember driving home that Wednesday because the track team kind of did the same thing. Like we kind of had, it wasn't really an inter-squad meet, but we all came down to see the throwers throw because we weren't sure what was going to happen. And then I remember driving home, and as I was in New Jersey, because I live in Delaware, so at this point I'm fairly close to my house, and I just see a couple of group chats of mine going crazy, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, there's got to be some major news. So I almost pulled over, but I said, no, I'll just check it when I get home because I'm pretty close at this point. And I pull into my driveway and I see Tom Hanks has it and the NBA suspended the season. And I'm like, holy cow. That's, yeah, life's not going to be the same for the next little bit here, I don't think. But
I know.
yeah, never would have thought it would have gotten as bad as it did.
I know.
For as long as it did. But yeah, and we're still dealing with it.
I know. I honestly thought after those 2 weeks, I was like, I think we'll go back. Like, I really do. And then I'm like, after that second week, I'm like, we're not. And I was just like, oh, so bummed.
Yeah. So, well, let me ask you this. Yeah, because my mother's a teacher as well.
What does she teach?
So she actually taught me in high school physics and math.
Oh my, I give her props for teaching, not teaching you because you're awesome, but like teaching physics and math. Like,
yeah.
I told myself.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
And math minor.
Oh my gosh. See, I told myself, if I can teach 5th grade math, I can just teach all math, and I just feel so accomplished. Anything after that, I'm kind of like, I don't know, but I'll try, you know?
Yeah. So I had her junior year for pre-calculus, and then senior year for calculus and physics.
Wow.
Because I go to a private school as well, or I did, and she teaches there still. But I remember she was very adamant, like if there could possibly be a way, she wanted to go back. She was prepared to take whatever risk there was because she felt that strongly about wanting to be in person, and for the students' sake, the experience being better and it being easier to learn in person. So what are your thoughts on that with the cases rising in the current situation as it is?
Well, obviously I want to go back, but I don't want to if safety is going to be an issue. If safety comes into question, then the kids aren't going to feel safe. And if I don't feel safe, I won't make the kids feel safe. And I know, like, especially younger kids, like, they soak in things like a sponge, and you wouldn't expect it. But a lot of kids have anxiety about this. And I worked at summer camp over the summer, and we were outside, like, 6 feet apart, and it went very well. Like, no one got it. And this girl, a little girl, asked me, she was in 2nd grade, she was like, when is this going to end? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, when is COVID going to end? And I remember having like a staff training about like how to answer these questions because, you know, as an adult, we're supposed to have quote unquote all the answers, but like we don't, not all the time. And I just kind of like told her, you know, if we all work together and wear our masks, it'll end a lot sooner. So we just got to work together and end our masks. And like, that was the best way I could answer the question, you know, because there is no answer at the moment. But again, I want to go back, but if safety's the issue, then it's not going to be worth it for the teachers or the kids.
Sure. Yeah, well, I guess to kind of backtrack a little bit, I want to ask you about, I've heard great things about the education program here at Gordon. So what inspired you to choose that as your major and ultimately become a teacher?
So I actually answered this question the other day, so it's kind of funny. So it kind of started when I was 6. I have a family of teachers. Some of my aunts are teachers, so it kind of runs in the family, but it really started with my 1st grade teacher, Miss Hogan, Mrs. McGuire. I think she got married. And we were her first class, and she was just the most like kind, caring, like really cared about your well-being as a teacher. And I just looked up to her and I was like, I want to be just like her because she's awesome. And she just made learning fun. And that was in first grade. So I loved first grade. And then so at Gordon, I had to, at the time, the Department of Ed required you to double major. Now you don't have to, you lucky ducks. But so I doubled in English as well. And the reason being is because of my sixth grade English teacher, Mrs. White. And again, she was like she was so kind, really cared about your well-being, really wanted a relationship with you. She always complimented me on my outfits, so that was a plus. But just teachers who cared about my well-being and my success as an individual student, like, it went such a long way because now I'm a teacher. So that's kind of what inspired me. And also I couldn't have imagined not being in school. Like, a school schedule just makes sense to me, and being in that school environment. I can't imagine not being in school. So, yeah.
So you mentioned the master's program that you're working on right now. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's a lot of work. I have no life at the moment, and that's okay. So I'm going for English as a second language and reading specialist. And I have to, for my reading specialist license, I have to work with 2 kiddos, and I'm actually working with coach's daughter, which has been pretty fun, and helping her tackle reading, but she's awesome. So I work with them. I work with 2 students twice a week. So that's like 4 hours out of my week. But it's mostly just like time management. It's really, I love the Gordon program. It's super inspiring. The professors know so much. I've gotten so many like good resources from them and a lot of good advice from them. They just really know their craft very well. And that's like what I wanted in a program. I'm like, I want professors who like are really passionate, know their craft, and like really want to know you as a person. So that's been great. But I feel like I said, with between coaching, teaching, and my master's, I just feel like I have no life. But time management at its finest.
So I usually like to end by talking a little bit about what you like to do for fun, hobbies, entertainment. I know you love reading and love books, and I'm curious if you, also being an English major, in addition to your education major, if one played a role in the other, or what the deal is with that. So tell me about your love for books.
Well, so I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to books, and I'm really sorry, I have a dog and he's like howling. So if you hear him in the background, that's just him. So anyways, I always loved reading. My mom would always take me to the library when I was a kid. I would like bring out a stack of books. And when I had more of a life before my master's, I would read like a book a week. I just would like fly through them. I was also the kid who would like stay up really late at night with their flashlight, like reading. But I just like, it was always like innate. It was always there. Actually, when I was a kid, it's kind of ironic. I saw a reading specialist because I was really quiet as a kid, so I wouldn't ask for help in class. And so I had to go to the reading specialist, but like I knew everything once I sat with her one-on-one, but she also like inspired me to keep reading even if it was hard and things like that. But yeah, it was like my sixth grade English teacher who also inspired me. And I also love writing too. So that I try to do that in my spare time as well. So I'm working on a children's book. So stay tuned for that, working on it. But yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what's your favorite genre, or any other favorite books that you've read?
Well, so I really like travel writing, like Ernest Hemingway's. I just love the authenticity with it. It's just because it's so real. I love traveling too. So that's another thing I like to do for fun. Obviously can't do that now because of COVID. So my travel bug is really having a problem right now. But I love travel writing because everyone has a different experience when they're traveling. So I think it's awesome to read about it. I also like, this isn't really like a genre, but I love Reese Witherspoon has a book club, and I always follow her books, and it's always about like a strong woman it's always the protagonist in the book is like a strong woman. So I love her picks. But I really love, I love biographies. I love travel writing. I'm always a sucker for like a rom-com. But those are some of the genres I like to nerd out about. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know you mentioned you don't have a lot of free time right now, but is there anything else you do for entertainment? Any other, I don't know if you're a fan of movies or TV shows or anything like that.
So one of my COVID purchases was like a Nintendo Switch. It's the light one. It's blue, so it's really tiny. And I love playing Animal Crossing.
I know nothing about that game except I know it's kind of exploded.
It is.
It's a really big thing, but.
So I played the game when I was a kid, when I had like the first Nintendo DS. It was like the big bulky blue one. And I played this game when I was a kid. So when I saw they were making a new one, I was like, I have to get this game. Like, I just have to do it. And I just love, I have really nice neighbors. They're pretty nice animals. My favorite one is named Cherry, and she's a dog. Pretty great. You should talk to her sometime. But it's just fun because now you can like design your island and like put stuff on it and like name your island. So if you ever get it and want to play, or anyone, please let me know and I can give you my island code and we can meet up and Animal Cross out. But I just like having that little pretend world. So
the Switch is the only current generation of console I don't have. I have the PS4 and the Xbox One, but I don't have the Switch yet. So
what are you doing, Schneid? You gotta hop on this bandwagon. Animal Crossing it's like a low-key game. I think my favorite part is in the game you get to catch fish and birds, and then you put them in the museum and you dig up fossils, and it's pretty epic. It's a low-key game. I know like a lot of people like more intense games, but for someone like me, it works. So I recommend you got to get the Switch. I recommend it. It's fun.
I've been thinking about it, but the PS5 just came out this week, so I'm kind of torn. Like, I'm trying to decide: do I go with the next gen, or do I try to complete the? I guess it's still the current gen, because everybody's talking about trying to buy a PS5 and you can't get them anywhere because they're all out of stock. But
you should get the Switch. The Switch is fun because I have the Lite because you can't take off the controllers. With the bigger one, you can, and then you can like play with other people and like put it on your TV. So I think the Switch is a great investment. If you already have the PS4, I think you should just go for the Switch. That's my opinion, but it's your choice. And Christmas is coming, so you never know.
Yeah, that's true too. Probably best to wait until Christmas, see what I pick up through any gifts I get before I make a decision like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, Corrine, thank you so much for coming on tonight and spending some time with me through Zoom here virtually. I wish we were in person, but I guess it's gonna be nice for people to actually be able to see us talking. We did a few of these during the first lockdown when the last semester got suspended. But yeah, this first one I've done. Clearly I couldn't figure out the issue with the mic and the technology. But thanks again, and thanks for everything that you have given to this program, both as an athlete and as a coach. And I know teachers are some of the most underappreciated people in our world today. So I know you're doing great work over there as well, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you. You too. And happy graduation. Come back and
Thank
visit
you.
us, please. And I hope we can, because I'll be walking with you. I hope we can all actually walk. So
Yeah.
fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'll
Fingers
definitely be
crossed.
back in May, assuming that's still what we do. But yeah, the way things are going right now, who knows? But keep our
Yep.
fingers crossed.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, have a great rest of your Friday, and hopefully see you soon.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
All right.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.